Well, good Friday morning, everyone. Now, I don't know how many times I say this at the beginning of my talk, uh, and sometimes I mean it, and sometimes I don't. But uh, this is probably going to be a relatively short talk this morning because just in a few minutes I have to log on and be part of something very exciting, the European uh, Thelemic Gathering. And it's in Macedonia this year. And I've had the privilege of visiting Macedonia and speaking and meeting with magicians and members of the OTO and other Thelemites throughout the world. And and I wish I could be there with them in person today, but the travel is not what it used to be. And anyway, I just love Macedonia. It's just it's kind of like when I was a kid, I didn't know uh, how different countries, and I always imagined uh, the mythological history of ancient Greece and Macedonia and that area, and Alexander the Great, and see all of these pictures of that area of the world, the countryside, the mountains and the vineyards, and but mostly I imagined the way the light shone. You, when you fantasize about, say, ancient Greece or something, or the Greek Isles, or looking out over ancient Carthage, or uh, in your imagination, the light is warm and magical and golden and almost and soft. You hear about artists talk about the light in southern France is great for. Well, that's how I always imagined that area of the world. And when I went to Macedonia and my hosts uh, took me to the countryside and up to a beautiful monastery and and church. The light, that was the light. The light was uh, just like that. You could breathe the light. You could you could smell the light. It's like clean, almost a clean, dusty, uh, warm light. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to talk just a moment because I was working on this for another project. I'm going to talk briefly about the book that many of us know as, uh, and this one is so old that it's falling apart, The Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage by S.L. McGregor Mathers. Okay, it's a famous book. Okay, and Mathers translated it in 1880 something. Okay, what he did was he translated uh, a copy of it that he found in the Bibliothèque Arsenal in Paris, and he translated it from the French. He got a French version of it. It was originally written in, well, the French one was copied from one that was written in German, and the German, if I'm not mistaken, was translated from Hebrew. And the reason that it's famous is Not only is it a magic book, a medieval magic book written in the 1400s or something by a famous historical character, Abraham the Jew, was he wrote other alchemical texts and stuff. Okay. Uh, but it talked about a process that in order for a magician to do any kind of work, okay, uh, the magician has to uh, be, he has to be working from a level of consciousness that is significantly illuminated. In other words, you can do magic tricks just like following a recipe, and you can just be a reprobate, if that's how you pronounce reprobate. And just because of the mechanics of the universe, sometimes the magic sort of works and sometimes it doesn't. But unless you have a significant level of illumination yourself, you don't know what is or is not in your own best interest, first of all. And then secondly, you're not attuned enough to the universe to realize what is proper for you to tinker with and what is not. So when it blows up in your face, it can be a pretty dramatic thing. And if you attribute bad luck or demonic possession or something else to that bad luck or that operation blowing up in your face, then do. But the Book of Abramelin spent a great deal of, there are 4 books. Okay, Mather's only translated 3 of the French ones. Most of the important part of the book was systematically setting to work to gain knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. It's sort of a concept that was not a big thing in medieval magic, or at least not under those terms. And to Abramelin, or to Abraham the Jew, it was the most important thing. It's like in order to do Solomonic magic, you had to be a Solomon. Okay. And so the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel was the first step, the very first step. And then when you broke through to that level of consciousness, it's like you and an angel, your perfect angel, are wed, and together you can wisely set forth I can and am responsible for this and this and this and this in the universe. And so I've got the entire momentum of the universe behind my magic. And that was kind of new stuff, especially for like late 19th century magicians of the Golden Dawn. And when this thing got translated, it was big stuff. Wow, in order to do magic, in order to exhibit godlike powers, you got to be godlike. Okay, so it's now they've been talking about this in the East forever. No, be one with God first, and then everything you do is magic, And and he published the book in 1888, and it was such a bombshell, especially among the Hermetic, Masonic kind of magicians of the 19th century. It was such a bombshell, and it seemed so important, and it was so radically different. It just catapulted grimoire magic to a whole different octave of spiritual importance. And so big a step this was that superstition sort of surrounded it. Oh, it's so powerful. This secret is so bad that all the demons of hell feel threatened, all the infernal spirits and the imbalanced elementals and all the forces of nature that don't want to be organized and directed. Okay. Go to work to make sure you don't do this. And so a big superstition surrounded the even the ownership of this book. And when members of the Golden Dawn had a copy of it and read it, said, God, this is good stuff. And that every little bad thing that happened to them, oh, they stubbed their foot or their wife miscarried or rumors started to spread. Whoa, it's bad luck if you even own this book. You know, you may even die. Well, people die all the time, okay? And it's probably not anything to do with the book in their library. But magicians, part of their art form, carries the danger of being superstitious about this shit. But anyway, Mathers translated it. Mathers published it. It's what you get when you get the Sacred Magick of Abramelin the Mage. This is a pirated edition from the 30s. Okay. De Lawrence, he pirated a whole bunch of shit. Okay. Trouble is, if you read German, which I don't, but if you read German, you could find a copy of the German edition from which the French translation supposedly was based, and you would see that there's 4 books, and you would see that the magic sections of it's like a draft. Okay, it's like the first sketch draft of the French translation of the whole thing, but it was never finished. And that's what Mathers was using to translate it into English. And it's only been recently that George Dan in England or in Germany translated a good German version, and Stephen Guth translated that into English. And let's see what year was that. Okay, because when I heard that was going to happen, 2006, when I heard that was in the works, boy, did I want to see that. Not only did I want to see that, I wanted to read it and, if possible, make my comments. And the good folks at Ibis Press, who published that under the title The Book of Abramelin, asked me to pen the foreword to it. Now, I'm not going to read the whole foreword to it because I've done that before over the last 3 years or so. But I want to show you something. I'm going to start right here. The 4th book of the Book of Abramelin, which is book 3 in the Mathers translation, is comprised of 30 short chapters that present us with a series of magic squares containing letters arranged upon a grid of smaller squares. The magic squares for each chapter are numbered, and they're also preceded by a numbered index outlining each square's particular virtue and power. Justified or not in the minds of many practicing magicians, this section of the book is magically the most important. Now I'm going to show you, if I can quickly turn to this without, I'll turn to chapter, the 27th chapter, to cause visions to appear. Okay. See, to cause visions to appear. And then you see all of these, a list of all of those squares, okay? To make visions of trellis work. Yeah. Strange little kind of mundane things, some of them, and some of them are pretty freaky. But look over here. That's what the squares look like. Okay. One of them, okay, is fully filled in, but you see all these other ones with big holes in them, okay? Now, not being afraid to screw up and mark up my book, this one right here, okay, it says 25 there at the bottom. Anyway, you can see the squares that are printed. Those are what Mathers did. But the real square was all filled in. They're all filled in. And those sort of penciled and red ones, I filled it in myself from material that's found in the new Book of Abramelin. Okay. Such was the mystique of the squares Abramelin held on the magical imagination of the Golden Dawn era magicians. One can only imagine what they might have thought if they knew that virtually none of the information concerning the magic squares in the Mathers translation agrees with that found in the original German manuscripts. And I just showed you there. But it's not only the squares, it's their order that are out of whack. In other words, somebody was starting to do good work on it in the French manuscript. They were starting to do good work. But it was still in sort of incomplete draft form before it found its way into the library. And that's what Mathers was using. For instance, there are 242 squares in the Mathers edition. 160 of them, over 2/3, are only partially filled with letters. The German edition, on the other hand, itemizes material for 251. Okay, 11 more squares altogether. All of them completely filled in. Furthermore, there is dramatic, almost universal disparity in how the magic words that would fill the squares are spelled. How the squares are distributed within the chapters, and how the squares are indexed and identified. Coming and going. Doesn't agree. Misspelled, misplaced, incomplete. It almost breaks one's heart to think of the countless hours Mathers consumed writing his commentaries on the squares as he heroically labored to justify Kabbalistically the possible meanings of misspelled words that fill incomplete squares that are out of order, incorrectly distributed, and misidentified. I realize I may appear that I'm being unduly hard on poor Mathers, and it's certainly not my intention. He's a great adept. Have highest regard for this great magical genius whose work continues to enlighten and inspire new generations of serious students of the Western mysteries. We owe him an immeasurable debt. Our focus should not be on what his translation was not. Rather, we should celebrate what the new Den Guth translation is, an elegant and accurate exposition of an ancient and artful technique for self-realization and self-initiation. I, for one, welcome this important and highly readable edition of a book that is once again destined to make a profound impact on the world of Western Hermeticism. And that's my thing there. I just kind of wanted to show you what the contrast. Now, does it matter? Some years ago, a group of quite knowledgeable magical scholars, at least, and and practicing magicians on the East Coast, including one individual that was a very close friend of mine, got together and they created this book called the Necronomicon. Okay, sort of based on the mythos of Lovecraft and stuff, complete with sigils and conjurations and they worked hard on it, and it's really really good. And in mythology, in Lovecraftian mythology, there is this book, the Necronomicon. So I'm sure they figured that they could sell a few too, and they did, and it's still out there in various editions and stuff. And it's easy for people to say, yeah, but that's not the real Necronomicon, you know. Well, of course, that way of looking at it, it isn't real. And you could say, well, all the books of H.P. Lovecraft aren't real too. No, they're or Peter Pan or Alice in Wonderland, they're not real. Of course they're real. And they're real if you make them real. They're real if you observe them to be real. It's real if you work with them as if it was real. Ultimately, every breath you take is arbitrary. The Necronomicon can really work, and there are magicians who work with the Necronomicon, develop it into their own magical practice, and are perfectly happy with it. If you like the Mathers broken up version just because it's a good translation of a poor manuscript, it's fine too. And it to a certain extent, it's a matter of magicians arguing over angels dancing on the head of a pin to say, well, this book of Abramelin doesn't work, and this one does. Okay. It's not that way at all. The magic's not in the book. The magic's in the magician. And that's where I'm going to have to stop. See, I told you we've gone pretty much a half an hour when I told you it was only going to be shorter. But anyway, tomorrow for Saturday morning cartoons, I hope you're with me tomorrow. And until then, continue to be good to yourself. If you're in the path of the hurricane, which is now a tropical storm, please don't take any chances. If you're It's quite a serious thing. Power's out. You might not even be getting this. So until tomorrow, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, live under will.